Guys, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we are going to be doing a quick redesign where we are going to be changing this particular UI design into this, right? And in the process, I'm going to be going through a lot of things. We're going to be talking about layouts, alignment. We're going to be talking about white spaces. We're going to be talking about colors and how to make use of components, right? So this is going to be a guide to improve your design. So if you're designing and you're wondering what is wrong with this design, I'm going to be showing you a few tips or a few ways you can improve your designs from looking like something like this to this. So guys, please, if you've not subscribed, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you find any of my videos helpful. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. Okay guys, so in order to create an improved version of this design, we are going to highlight the areas of improvements that we're going to be making to the updated version so that we know where to pay attention to. And on the right here, I've just pasted the list of things that could be better, where we could pay attention to improve this particular design. So here we have a number of things. As you can see here, the first thing that we have here is the typeface, right? The typography. We want to stick to a particular type of typeface, and we want to improve on the hierarchy of the different sizes of that typeface. The next thing we want to improve on is the use of icons. Next thing is going to be colors. We want to improve on the brand color, and we want to improve on the contrast between the colors and the text so that it enables the user read whatever the text is properly. So it just improves the readability of the UI. Then last, we are going to look at the layout, which is very important. And the layout consists of a few things, which includes the white spaces, the use of white spaces around the dashboard, the alignment, and also containers, right? So how you use your containers, be it the strokes, the fill, or the shadows, is also really important. So now that we have this few points that we've highlighted to use to create our designs, we can go ahead to start creating our designs. So starting with the layout, the first thing is going to bring in a new frame. I'm just going to click on the frame and I'm going to go to the desktop MacBook Pro 16 frame, which is closely to what I particularly use. I'm going to change this width to 1680 because that's the desktop frame of my PC and I want to stay consistent with that, with a height of 1000. So having this, the next thing we want to do is our side menu, just like you see here. And for the side menu, I'm going to use a width of 256. So I'm going to click on this frame icon here and I'm going to draw out a frame just from top to down, as you see here. So for this, I'm going to make it a width of 256 and I like using that particular width size. All right, so for the colors, I'm just going to go ahead to bring in the assets I'm going to be using for this new design, for the colors and also the icons. So I'm going to go to the top here and I'm just going to bring all of these items down into this design board a little bit more. So for the colors, the sidebar color, I'm going to select the fill and I'm going to pick this particular primary color here. I'm going to be using this as our primary color. So I'm going to move our designs to the right a little bit so that we don't get confused as we are working. Okay, so now once we have this, the next thing we want to do obviously is to create another frame for this particular page. So I'm going to click on this frame and I'm going to draw out another frame just like this. So we have one for our side menu and one for our actual page. But our side menu is 256. If you take out 256 from the entire width of this particular desktop, I think I made it 1680, right? Yeah, so I'm just going to turn this off and make this 1000. Right, so once we have this, I'm going to stretch out this particular frame that we created for the dashboard page to fill up the complete width. And if you take a look at it, the size of the sidebar menu, which is 256, if it's taken out of the entire width, which is 1680, I think we are going to get something like 1424, right? So I'm just going to fill that in. and I'm going to make sure this particular frame for the page fits perfectly in this position. So once we have this, the next thing I want to do is to create our grid, because you want to have your layout grid. In this case, we are working to improve the alignment, right? Still on the layout, we're working to improve the alignment, and to do that, you're going to try as much as possible to work with layout grids so that you can align your items properly. So I'm going to select this frame that we created on the page section, and I'm going to turn out the layout grid. This layout grid is going to be a column grid, and I'm going to use a count of 24, right? For the margin, I'm just going to use a margin of 50, and I'm just going to leave everything else like this. So for our sidebar menu, I'm going to start by adding the brand title, which is the name of the brand, which is, in this case, I think it's jointly. I'm going to select this, and I'm going to make it a little bold. Right, I also want to bring in this hamburger menu, just like the way it's done from the initial design here. I'm going to bring that in, going to hold Option and duplicate. I'm going to select both of these and hit Shift A to create an auto layout on them, and I'm going to stretch out this particular frame to fill up this container, and I'm going to center them to the middle. Now, once we have this, I'm going to spread out this a little more. Now, once we have this, I think the next thing we want to do is to create our navigation menu. So as we can see here, we have home, personal savings, group savings, and accounts, right? So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to create a navigation item, right? So for here, we have home, which is the first thing, and I'm going to make this 16 pixel, and the size is going to be just regular. So I'm going to bring in our home icon. I'm going to bring in our home icon, but before I do that, I'm going to make sure I make all of these icons a component. So I'm going to create all of them as an individual component. Then I'm going to bring in one of these icons, which is the home icon, which is what we are trying to work with. So I'm going to select both of these, the home icon and the text itself, and I'm going to hit Shift A on it to create an auto layout. I want this to be a lot wider than this, so I'm going to increase the width. I'm just going to stretch it out using my own discretion. So I can also click on this particular side nav menu and create a grid system. So I'm going to create a grid on this. It's going to be column. I'm just going to make it 6. I'm going to give it a margin of, let's say, 28, for instance. I think 28 is cool. So for that, I'm just going to center our navigation item to just fill in the contents of this spacing. So I'm going to increase the left and right spacing to, let's see 12, or let's do 8. Then for top and bottom, we can do like 6, just to create a balance, right? So once we have this, I'm going to go ahead to create this particular section as a component itself. Once I've done that, I'm going to remove it, and I'm going to bring in the instance of this particular component, right? So I'm going to click on this home text here that we have here, and as you can see, we have this home text, and this button on the right here lets us create a text property. So I'm going to say nav title, right? And I'm going to create property. So I'm going to click on this, or I'm still going to click on this, but this time I'm going to click on the icon section. And for the icon section, I'm going to click on this icon here that says create instance swap. And for the instance swap, I'm going to click on all of these icons that we just made a component, right? So, and that's what I'm going to select as the preferred values. So I'm going to click on create property. Now we have an instance swap for the icon and a text property here. Now, what is the use of what we just did? If I create duplicates of this, let's say I create 3 more duplicates, just like the way we have it on this particular initial design, what we can do here is just by clicking on the second one, I can go to this drop down here that says instance, and I can pick the next icon, right? And for the next icon here, you can see here, I can just click on this, and for the name, I can go ahead to rename it here from home to personal savings. This saves us a whole lot of time rather than creating a new item, adding the icon and the text. So here I'm going to click on this. I'm going to select this user icon, and I'm going to change the text to account. For instance, is the account that was used there? Yeah, account. So we're going to leave that in as account. I think this particular icons is remaining one, so I think we need to use one of these group savings icon. I'm just going to take this, create a duplicate. The icons here, the sizes are 32, so I'm going to reduce this a little bit. I'm going to cut it and paste it among these navigation icons here, right? So I'm just going to move this to the right, and I'm going to also make this a component. So once I've done that, I'm going to go here. I'm going to go back to our settings. I'm going to go to the initial components. You know what? I'm going to increase this so that we can see the components we created also. All right. So I'm just going to move this component here so we can see that too. So I'm going to go to the settings of this, and I'm going to click on this plus to add an additional preferred value to this, and for that it's going to be this icon that we see here. So for that, I'm going to come to this third item, navigation item, and I want to swap this to this group user kind of icon, and I'm going to change the text to group savings. And just like that, I think we are done with our side menu, right? So the next thing we want to focus on is this, the main page right here. And for the main page, the first thing we want to do is add a page title. Let's say welcome to your dashboard. This is going to be the subtext, and the primary text, I'm just going to say hello, comma, then the name of the person, which in this case is Maureen. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to increase the font size to be a little bigger and bolder. I'm going to select both the title and the subtitle, hit Shift A to create an auto layout, and then with a spacing of 0. Once I have this, I'm going to position it where the navigation item starts, down one layer from the page title. I'm also going to bring in the user profile image, right, which is something that was missing from the previous design, and it's going to make a huge difference having this user profile displayed. So once we have this, I'm going to go ahead to start creating our card components, right? The next thing we want to create is our card component for this particular design. And unlike the current design here that used 3 card grid system, I'm going to use 4 cards because I want to explain more in terms of the grid spacing. So from here, the next thing we're going to do is to draw out our card components, and for each card I'm going to use a width of 306. So I'm going to click on this particular frame icon here, and I'm just going to draw out this frame. I'm going to make the frame a width of 306, and I'm just going to reduce the height a little bit, right? So for this frame, I'm going to fill it with one of the colors that we brought in here, which is this light green color here. I'm going to fill it with this, and what I'm going to do is just like the way we did for our side menu, I'm going to create a component for our card, right? We want to have 4 of these cards, so it's easier to work with once you have it as a component, right? So I'm going to turn off this layout grid just so that we see what we're working with. So once we've turned off the grid system, we want to start drawing out our card, and the first thing I'm going to do is to paste in the text for each of these cards. And for this is going to be, the first one is going to be wallet balance, and we also want to bring in an icon. But before I bring in any of these icons, just like as we've done, especially for the cards icon, which is this first four icons here, I'm also going to make them components. I'm going to select all of them, click on create multiple components, and then I'm going to bring in the instance of one of this, which is this particular one. For this, I'm going to change its color. It's going to be this particular dark green that we are using here. Just to, sorry, I'm supposed to select the selection colors. I'm going to be using this particular dark green that you see here. And for that, I'm going to select both of these, which is auto layouts together. If I click Command Shift G to detach them, you can see that they are just individual texts. If I select both of them, I'm just going to remove the spacing between them. So I'm going to select the icon also and hit Shift A to create auto layout on it. Once we have this, our card item is now looking nice. So the next thing, I'm going to give it a fixed height of 138. So once we have this, having this auto layout frame, I want to make this entire card component a complete auto layout component, right? So I'm going to hit Shift A on it again, and for this particular outer auto layout parent frame, I'm just going to drag it to fill this container just like this, right? Yeah, and then I can specify the top to be 20 and the left and right to be 20. But I personally think that's too much, so I'm going to reduce the top and bottom to something like 14 and this to 14. So I think this is good. So once we have this auto layout frame, I can move this auto layout frame out of this initial frame and remove this particular one because I don't want to use a frame. I want to use a complete auto layout frame, right? So I'm going to fill this frame back with initial color. So once we have this successfully created, I'm going to give it a rounded edge of, let's say 8, just so it's not too much. So I'm going to select this, and the next thing is I want to make it a component, right? Once I did make it a component, the next thing is to create our component properties. The first is going to be the instance swap. I'm going to create an instance swap. I'm going to click on create the preferred properties, and for that I want to select other icons for other card. So it's going to be this. We're going to have what else? This target icon and also this group icon. So I'm going to do create property, and for the text the same thing. I'm going to create this. Is going to be card text, card title, and here I'm going to do create property is going to be card value, right? So we're going to have this all created. So once we have these components, I'm going to remove this from the artboard. Now it's a component, and I'm going to duplicate it just like the way we did for this side menu, and I'm going to create 4 more instances of this, right? I'm going to select all 4 of them and hit Shift A on them. For the spacing, I'm going to use 32 to space this out, and if I click on this and I turn on our grid system, you're going to see that it just fits perfectly in where we have our contents, right? And none of this is overflowing in the margin section. So I'm going to turn off the grid back, and we're just going to leave this the way it is. Now what we want to do is to change the contents of each of these cards, right? So the first thing, this second one, I'm going to swap the icon from this to, let's say, this for instance, and for the card title we're going to change this to group savings. We're going to leave the value as it is. We're going to change the next icon from this to this, and the title is going to be target account. The value remains the same, and for the last card here we're just going to switch this icon to this, and I'm going to change the title to be safe lock, right? So once we have this coming, we see that our dashboard design is coming up nice. The next thing I want to do is to create this notification icon on the top right corner here. So I'm going to click on this. We are not using this notification icon in multiple places for now, so there's no need to make it a component. So I'm just going to hold Alt and bring it down to our artboard. But this is white, so I'm going to change the color here to um, black, right? So we're just going to have something like this. I'm also going to select this and select the title and hit Shift A to just create an auto layout and make sure they are both aligned top. So from here, we want to create the next section of this particular dashboard, and what's going to inform us in creating the next dashboard. Let's look at what we have here. So here we have a list of things that the user is supposed to do, but we want to display these things nicely, right? We want to display them in a way that is not boring, right? So the first thing we want to do is to let them complete their account setup, or let's see, verify their BVN or add a BVN or something like that. So we're going to create something like a warning message, right? So I'm just going to write a text here that says verify your account, right? And this is going to be the title. So I'm going to make the title 18, and I'm going to make this medium. So for this, I'm also going to have a subtitle. Here, the subtitle can be add your BVN or NIN, right? And for the subtitle, I'm just going to reduce the size of this to 14, and it's going to be light. So I'm going to select both of this, and I'm going to hit Shift A. I also want an icon to represent this action, which is going to be this warning icon here. I'm then going to bring it down also. And for the color, I'm going to pick one of these warning colors we have here, which is this shade of red, which is the same thing I'm going to do for the text. I'm going to pick this color here. And for this, I'm going to reduce the spacing to 0, or I think 0 is too small, maybe 2 pixel, or let's say 4. And I'm going to select the icon, hit Shift A, also make that an auto layout frame. And from here, the next thing we are going to do is to make and from here, the next thing we want to do is to give this some padding, right? Top and bottom padding, let's say 20, left and right, let's say 40, for instance. But we're not just going to be using 40, we're going to be using the same left and right padding we used here, which is 14. So I'm going to be using 14 here. And why is that? Because I want these particular items to be aligned. So when the container starts from the same place, and the contents of the container should also start from the same place. So I'm just going to increase this container all the way to the right, so it fills up 2 columns. And I'm going to fill this particular container with this light color here. So once we have this, I'm also going to turn on the edges, the rounded corners to 8, just so it stays consistent with what we had initially. So now we have this warning section where we can tell the user to maybe verify their account, add their BVN, NIN, and verify their image, and verify your email. Sorry. So once you have this, the next thing we want to do is to bring in some more features from the previous design. As you can see here, we have this quick savings button here, which is boring and it's looking out of place. So what we want to do is to make it more interesting, right? So I'm going to use this same banner thing that we used here. I'm just going to duplicate the entire thing, and I'm going to place it here. But I'm not going to be using the same set of colors, right? So we are going to change up a few things here. First is going to be the icon. So I'm going to select this icon, and I'm going to hit paste to replace here. And for the icon color, I'm going to be sticking with white. And for the text, I'm going to rename this text to quick save, and the subtext will be quickly add or top up your savings account. So let's use that text for instance. And for the background color, I want to fill the background color with this initial background color that we had here, which is the brand color that I have chosen, right? And for the text, it's going to be white, right? So we've changed that boring quick save button here to something that looks more interesting. So just by looking at this, I don't think the user will have the full knowledge that this is a clickable card. So what we can do is we could assist the user in that sense, right? To make this a clickable card, I'm just going to add a button that says start now, right? And I'm going to hit Shift A to make it an auto layout button. I'm going to give it a stroke. The stroke is going to be white, and I'm going to move it into this particular design. For this, I'm going to spread it out, right? So I'm going to make this auto layouts. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure these two items here are both auto layout frames. So I'm going to hit Shift A to make it an auto layout. Then I can click on the entire card and make this auto. And you're going to see that these designs are now like spread across, right? So the next thing I want to do here is I'm going to remove this from auto actually. I'm going to remove this and I'm just going to increase this up to this point because I don't want to use the exact values. Right, so for the button, I'm just going to change this color to white. I'm going to increase the padding. I'm going to increase the padding. Let's say this should be 20 and this should be, let's say 16 or 14. Then I'm going to make the rounded corners 8, right? So yeah, I think this start now button is looking nice. Maybe 4 is good for this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to increase the thickness of this a little bit more. And you can notice that we are using two different texts here, which is poppins and inter. So I'm going to try as much as possible to stick with poppins for the entire designs. So I'm going to change all my text to poppins. Yes, you can easily create a text style to save you all of this stress. And if I was using a component for this particular card, you will notice it's going to be easier to just switch the text in one component and it affects every other thing. So now that we've changed all the text to poppins and we have our start now button, I'm just going to position this properly. I'm also going to copy this and also paste it here. But for this, I'm going to change the selection color to be this particular red color that we're using here. So once we've added this, I'm also going to stretch it out just this part. Why is everything stretching? But then I'm going to select both of these, hit Shift A on it, and I'm just going to stretch this part to like the far end of this particular card, right? Yeah, so here you start now, but here I'm going to change this copy to verify now. All right, so we have the second layer of our grid sorted out. As you can see how I use this grid system, the first is a column of 4, the next is a column of 2, and you can keep switching this up just to keep your dashboard clean and interesting, right? So here we have a spacing of 32. I'm going to select both of these cards here. I'm going to hit Shift A. It's also going to be a spacing of 32, just so that we keep this vertical spacing the same. And for the rows, if I click on this particular bottom row and the top row and I hit Shift A, I also want to keep the spacing to be 32. As you can now see that the spacing for the vertical and the horizontal is the same. Now you're done for the first and second row. We are now going to the last set of rows and columns for this design. All right, and for the remaining parts of these designs, I'm going to look at this. Here we have this download the mobile app section here. What could be better here is you could have the better icons, which is the better looking App Store and Play Store download icons. So for that, I'm just going to paste that in so I don't waste much of your time creating that particular section. I'm just going to paste that in. As you can see here, we just have a section here that says download the Jointly app on Android and iOS phones. So I'm going to align this just at the bottom here because I want it to be the last thing, and I'm going to align it with this other cards here. So once we have this, looking at the previous designs, there is also an option to add your debit card. Yeah, in order to add your debit card, I'm going to create a section here. I'm going to create a section here, which is going to be a frame. I'm just going to draw that frame all the way just like this. I'm also going to make sure the frame is hitting the walls of this section. I'm going to make the rounded corners 8, and I'm going to fill up this frame with this particular color here. So what I want to do here is to add the card title. So I'm going to say saved card, saved cards, and this is going to be, let's say 20, since it's a title, and I'm going to make it semi-bold. I'm going to change the text to Poppins, right? So I think semi-bold is too much. I think I'm going to just leave it at this. Then I'm going to give you the ability to manage this, manage cards, right? And for that, once the user creates a card, you want the ability to display that particular card that was displayed, that was created by the user. So I'm just going to go ahead to paste in the look of an existing card. So I'm just going to paste this particular card here. Can change the title so it looks more custom. But then I want to also create a section that allows the user create a new card. So I'm going to duplicate this particular existing card. I'm going to right click. I'm going to frame this selection. I'm going to open up the frame selection and delete the card that is in it. And for this framed selection, I'm going to make the rounded corners, let's say 12, and I'm going to make it stroke. And for the stroke, I'm going to make the type of stroke to be dashed. It's going to be a value of 8, right? So once I have this, I'm going to bring in our add card icon, and I'm also going to bring in the text that says add a new card. So once we have this, I'm going to select both of these, hit Shift A to align them properly. I'm going to select both of these, hit Shift A on them. So once we have this, we have our card section. So instead of having this boring checklist that says add a debit card, you have something more interactive and more visually appealing. So I think we've covered most of the items on the previous dashboard. And here I'm just going to create something random, right? So I'm just going to create something different from the usual for this particular section. So I'm just going to draw out a frame, right, that fills up the entire space. We also need to be conscious of the spacing between these two items. We're using 32 and between, okay, so we're just going to keep this for now. And for this particular place, I want to fill it with an image, right? So I'm going to go ahead to add an image to this anytime from now. Perfect. So I'm going to select both of this. I'm going to hit Shift A, and for both of these frames, the top layer and the down layer, I'm going to also hit Shift A and leave it at 32. So we can have all the spacing around this dashboard equal, right? There is going to be occasions where they don't have to be equal. I'm just doing this because this is easier and quicker for me to get these designs out, right? So for this particular frame, I want to add a dark overlay. So I'm just going to click on this plus item and I'm going to add a dark overlay to it. It's going to be black. I'm going to reduce the opacity to this, let's say 40 or 60 pixel. And then I want to paste in a text. It's going to be just a text that says it's a referral text actually. So I'm just going to paste that in, that lets the user create a referral. So this is it, guys. I hope you guys were able to pick one or two things in this redesign. As you can see, for the colors, we've been able to improve the contrast. Now the text on each of these cards are very readable. If you're using a very dark color for your text, you want to make the background as light as possible. And if it's the other way around, you are using a very deep background, just like the way we use here, you want to use a very bright color for your text, just so that it's easy for users to read. You also want to keep your layout neat and organized. You want to make sure your items are aligned properly, and you also want to make sure you're using white spaces properly. One more thing I noticed we didn't do is on this particular section here where we have this particular navigation items. After selecting them all, you can see that the space between them is a little bit different, but we can hit Shift A to create an equal spacing on them. Here it's using 16. You can increase yours to 20 since there are no much items on that part and it can use up as much space as it wants. We can also click on one of these, create a duplicate, bring it down here, and we're going to name this logout. And we can take in one of these icons, which is the logout icon, right? So just from this, I really hope you guys were able to learn from here, and you can able to see how you can just take your designs from just a bare basic design up one level to be more interesting and more exciting for the user. So I hope these designs actually is a improved version, and from your own perspective you can make your own judgment. So this is what we had initially. So this is what we had initially, and this is what we have now. So guys, thank you guys for watching. Please don't forget to like, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe, as I'm going to see you guys in my next video. Bye for now.